There is so many things I want to talk about. See as my people just they suffer now. My country bad and my country harder now. Nowhere to go and there's nowhere to run. But I no go mind, I go put my grind on my mind. I no go fear, I go try make I dey my lane. No. Cause my brother say water no get enemy. So I no one get the enemy. And I go flow like the river. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It doesn't matter what my brother see.
Good day and positive vibration. This is Major.
And I'm a Cody Speaks. Peace and blessings and Gemini.
Peace, I'm rolling.
And welcome to Concern versus Podcast, where we talk about various topics and issues surrounding the melanated community. And today we have a very powerful discussion. And I think we need to talk about this. Democracy is ruining Africa. And I'm going to let Cody take over and talk about this.
So, guys, in 20, we witnessed a change in the political positioning on the continent of Africa. We witnessed countries expelling Western colonizers from the continent, and they began embracing, financial support from countries like Russia and China. In addition, we had several coups that plagued the continent due to civil unrest or civil protests of leaders that were put in place by the people, but then ultimately found out that they were actually widely supported by Western powers. So the emergence of countries in Africa taking control of their natural resources, such as cocoa in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and then you have lithium in Zimbabwe, has both inspired other countries in Africa to follow suit, but at the same time, it angered the Western world. Countries in Europe that benefited from refining such natural resources and then selling the processed goods back to those same African countries has but all ceased today. So basically, African countries solidified their relationship with neighboring countries, forming a strong African union and removing some artificial borders that the colonizers put in place through the League of Nations, also now known as the United Nations. So the decolonization of the African countries was met with opposition from the Western world, of course. And now it appears that mercenaries, CIA agents, and terrorist organizations supported by the West are beginning to cause division and disturbance in many of the vulnerable countries in an attempt, I believe, to destabilize the country in the region. So, y'all, with all those changes, do y'all think that Africa should revert to governing itself as the ancestors did pre-colonial rule? Was the Western experiment of democracy, was it or is it working on the continent of Africa? Or did the experiment, the democratic experiment or democracy, cause more harm than good in those countries? And those countries are, of course, rich in natural resources. So these two questions must be examined in order for us to understand the current political climate in Africa. And I pondered those two questions as I did my research on the continent and the current going-ons, right? And so upon careful examination of the history since colonization of the African continent and until now, a recurring theme continued to present itself. The concept of the man-made political system called democracy is at the core of all the conflicts, civil uprisings, and economic instability in the region. So my question to the panel is democracy ruining Africa?
I don't think democracy is ruining Africa. We created democracy, right? It is the foreign powers that duplicate no more than what they did with the religions and everything else. You got to realize we originated a lot of these different ideologies and stuff like all that originated out of Africa. The problem is once other groups that invaded Africa learned about all this, they put their own twist to it, added capitalism and all that stuff in them. And now they're the face of everything, you know. And the problem is our people been dumbing down. We believe that they created this when they really come from us. And that's been the biggest issue. And as far as the conflict and coups and everything, is because of the fact that everything, all trails to growth, success, building, start with Africa, the natural resources. So their goal is to create chaos, right? Throw a brick, hide your hand, right? And then they allow, if you watch the movie International, it was all about big banks creating small banks to create division in Africa, right? To control the war, the resources, etc. And that's that movie right there, starring Clive Owens. It just was a clear example how they do things, because it's not, you gotta realize the government co-opt with these private businesses, you know, in the West and Europe to do what they're doing. So my thing is to let everybody else speak about it, the fact that they have brought evilness in democracy. They have brought corruption through capitalism and whatnot. They see that the roads to success and all this is in Africa, right? And because we have been so indoctrinated to believe any and everything they say, we took on their language in Africa, we took on their culture, we took on their religion. And when I say their religion, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying plagiarized religion. You know what I'm saying? That came out of Egypt, that came out of Africa. So my thing is, we shouldn't get it twisted and put it all on democracy, because we created that. We got to put it on evil, corrupt empires that then took what we created, started, twisted it, and gave it to us in a way that we think is original from them.
Can I say that in answer to the question, is democracy ruining Africa? I don't think that democracy in itself is ruining Africa. What I think is ruining Africa is the misleaders that they currently have in positions there, most of whom are backed by the West. You will see if they do attempt to make policies in favor of their population, they are done away with, if I can say that. I'll say it like that for YouTube purposes. They're done away with. And a prime example of that is Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba in the Congo in 1960. Now, Congo is in absolute chaos, but Congo is one of the countries that has almost every single resource, including coltan, which runs the PC, the laptops, and the mobile phones that we are all currently on. The West has no interest in Africa bar its own interests, if I can put it that way. So yes, they create wars, and that is why Africa has never, ever been a stable continent, because to become stable, they would then look and think, our resources are not benefiting our own, and they do something about it. There's a proverb, an African proverb, when two brothers fight, others take their resources. And we are actually seeing that in real time now in the Congo and in other African hotspots. For instance, there's war going on in Sudan. Now that is ethnic cleansing. That is Arabs against the indigenous Africans. So we've got that. We've got the fight for resources, and then we've got the fight from invaders against the indigenous people of Africa. So no, I don't think it's democracy per se. I think it is the leaders, I call them misleaders, and the useless organization, the African Union.
And so when we're talking about the different fashions that's coming in after pre-colonial times, right? The countries on the continent of Africa were subjected to colonial rule for so long, and then after the such decolonization happened, they were still beholden to these Western countries who had adopted what we now know today as democracy, regardless to if we were the indigenous people of Africa were the first to use a form of government as democracy. The democracy that we know now is quite different from what we think it was back then, like Major said. So are we promoting a democratic republic, or are we promoting democracy in its current state? Because according to the United States Constitution, the United States is a democratic republic. Just like over in the Congo, they're the republic, the Democratic Republican of the Congo, right? So, but democracy has changed in its definition, and what's happening now is, like, I believe that was George Bush the senior said that their goal was to spread democracy around the world. So if you're spreading democracy around the world, what type of form of government were these countries entertaining prior to your quest to democratize everything? That would be my next question.
Don't get it twisted. I really want to believe that United States democracy was about their people, not melanated people, right? I want to believe, because I read and researched how Abe Lincoln had to fight with the banks because the banks was printing so much paper money, was doing so much illegal stuff, right? That he literally, before he became president, literally had to fight with them because the banks had been notorious for doing all kind of wicked stuff, right? I want to believe that the founding fathers in their mind felt like we're trying to prevent tyranny because of what they went through with Britain and whatnot. I want to believe that they, in their mind, they're seeing it, whereas, hey, we got to make sure we protect the people. But when you're dealing with banks, you're dealing with the Rothschilds and all them different families that you spoke about in the previous podcast, they made their business to not just control the people, control the government. But I really want to believe in this inception, yeah, I believe that they meant it as far as their country, right? But when they came to everybody else, that's when it became twisted and stuff, and they did things like Jim said in their own interest.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
From my study of Africa, this brother named Steve Biko said, when the white man came, we had the land. But when they gave us told us to bow our head and say our prayers, they gave us the Bible and they had the land. They had a French scientist went over to Africa, and when he discovered some soil, and they mixed the soil and they knew it was uranium. Right then and there, they know this was a gold mine. And as the coups popping up, that's just the young people. They are tired of suffering. And then they look at their Western counterparts or Europeans that's living on the same continent as they live like kings and queens, while we live like peasants, and this is our country. So the leaderships over there is corrupt. They are influenced by Western corruption, Western influence. And until we can get rid of all that out of Africa, it's going to be difficult. It was Gaddafi. Gaddafi said, let's make one Africa, the United States of Africa. Let's bring, or the United States of Africa. And the West didn't like that. The West didn't want no United States of Africa because in order for them to get the resources, they know they got to keep us divided. You see the United States of America, they brought all these states together, and that's how they became a superpower. They know if Africa unite, Africa would be the most powerful continent on the earth.
Absolutely, Roland. Absolutely. Akoti, I'll yield to you now.
So when we talk about places like the DR Congo, and we look at how they have emerged from the whole Rwandan scandal of genocide, they have systematically put leaders in charge of the Congo that favor democracy in the way that you and I on this panel has previously discussed. It has been tainted, but these, I'm gonna say, puppets that they've put in place through these false democratic elections have somehow managed to distract the people from what's really going on with shenanigans such as concentrating on militias who are fighting against the same powers who are basically enslaving the people over there in the Congo, and allowing countries such as China to rob them of their natural resources. It's no way in the world a country such as Congo, rich in natural resources, should be suffering. Everyone over there should be rich, just like the people in Dubai. So, so we have these puppet leaders that are so-called democratically elected that are not doing what they're not looking out for the best interest of their people, but only looking out for the 1%, the top 1% that represents the interest of the Western world. And that's why we are seeing these military coups and also these paramilitary coups pop up in protest of what these democratically elected leaders are doing. Go ahead.
That's not familiar with the states, though. That's the same thing going in the UK, in the islands, South America, North America. Where is melanated people at? The divide and conquer method is in full effect. Everything you just said, that's macro, right? You can go down to the micro, the smaller picture that's happening in the states. You know, they give us the leaders. They kill people. They create division and strife, what have you. We forgot what they did when they said COINTEL, how he was writing letters saying so and so did this and drawing crosses and stuff, and you know, all kind of stuff, right? So I'm saying this here. This is something they've been doing for years. So I still blame African, us as a people in the diaspora. They have been doing the same thing. They have not changed anything. It's not COINTEL no more. It's something else. And we have been falling victim to that. So for me, I feel like you're eventually going to have to stand up. Eventually going to have to do something. Because it's already out of hand. It's already, it's like I told you the other day, it's already urgent. So for me, it's like it's still our fault because what we going to do about it? So here, when you have these different coups and what have you, and then they get behind this one versus that one and what have you, you know, it gets just messy because you have a lot of melanated people dying. And whenever, let's say, the fraction that's about the people, when they get in power, they have no connections to really fight off the powers that be, and they find themselves getting ousted out of position, assassinated, or in prison later on, 5-10 years later, struggling trying to get something off the ground. So it's kind of crazy right now for all of us.
Well, but they're doing all of this under the guise of democracy. That's why I'm saying, like, if they were to go back or revert to how some countries in Africa still operate, I believe there's 56 countries on the continent of Africa, and there are still some countries that are being ruled by chiefs, tribal chiefs. They're not playing the democracy game where they're so-called holding these elections and they're giving you two people to decide, you know, who's going to rule over you. And then they have these so-called parliament where they're supposed to be representing the interests of the people, but then the people are poor, impoverished, working as slaves, and these other foreign nations are making all the money, and the members of parliament are making all the money, and the so-called elected president is making all the money. All of this is done under the umbrella of democracy. So, I believe that the people in Africa, if they would go back to their original state, how they ran their country prior to colonialism coming in, that Greek form of democracy coming in, I think that perhaps they could see a significant amount of change in their economic stability, because all democracy is doing on the continent of Africa, in my humble opinion, is destabilizing the countries.
Okay, let me come in here. I have to say I don't agree that they should go back to the chieftain system, because all that did was promote tribalism. And because it promoted tribalism, that was why the European powers were able to come in the first place. It left them weak. So in regards to the Congo, the country's so big, the country is vast, that there's a certain, and they're not well developed. So they can't control all of it. Because I was just reading an article by a Russian person, really good breakdown of what's going on in the Congo. And I will send it to Major and he can send it out to all of you. But basically he was saying that the surrounding countries, all of Congo's resources are being illegally sent through these countries. They're selling Congo's resources to benefit themselves. So for instance, they're all backing these revolutionary groups and leaving Congo in absolute chaos. So you've got Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and a couple of others that are all basically stealing or illegal resources are being funneled out of Congo to bolster their economies. And of course, because we've been so messed up, they are actually fighting their brother instead of helping their brother. Rwanda is the main one causing chaos, from what I read, in the Congo. Again, Coty, I've got to say I don't agree to go back into the chieftain system. What we've got to go, what they do need is democracy, but democracy with integrity, and that is currently lacking at the moment.
And
okay,
that's what I wanted to say, right? It's like you can't, because you got to realize for a long time, a lot of African countries ran by dictators. You know what I'm saying? And especially backed by the West of Europe, because someone wasn't always back. It was brutal for the people. It was more worse than what it is. So for me, I feel like you have to give the people some kind of verse. You have to make the people feel like you're about, not just feel like, but you're about the people. And when you say, well, damn, I'm gonna put it in power of this person or that person, which wind up being tribal type thing, or family or whatnot, a kingship and what have you, it becomes an issue, right? In reference to, like, if something bad happens, right, corruption and what have you, how you able to deal with that, And so I feel like you got to have some kind of parliament or some kind of council or government that keep balance. That's the reason why you're supposed to have a Congress or legislation, what have you, to balance out where the powers don't be in no one person hand or one group hand, So unfortunately, everything man touch, they corrupt, So that's all I want to say.
All right, so Sister Jemele mentioned Rwanda as the person that's the country that's causing all the conflict in the DR Congo.
Not all, but the most.
But they're in Rwanda doing Rwanda, and the Western powers don't like that. So now they're starting this propaganda campaign to say that Rwanda is financing the M23 militia that's pushing back against this rogue president. Rwanda does not have anything to do with that. As a matter of fact, article came out saying that the United States and other European nations are actually funding the M23 to cause destabilization in Congo so that they can continue to exploit the natural resources. That president that was just reelected in December, he is the one that implicated the Rwandan president Kagame into this fight. And the president in Rwanda says, we have nothing to do with that. We're over here busy governing our own country. And the United States do not like that. So we have to examine the United States relationship with Rwanda to really see what's really going on. See, the United States is very, very good at causing destabilization. That's the same thing that happened with Gaddafi. That's the same thing. These are the same people. They sent mercenaries in there. They sent the CIA in there to cause disturbance, to cause civil unrest. And then they were able to go in there under the guise of humanitarian crisis and saying that this gentleman, Gaddafi, who we all know and love, right? And loved, right? He is the problem. And they took him out. And we allowed that to happen. We drunk the Kool-Aid on their propaganda. And so that's the same propaganda that they're trying to use against Kagame in Rwanda. So don't be mistaken and don't be fooled by the Western's propaganda, because they're known for causing destabilization in countries.
You know what, Akoti, I would agree with you if the gentleman that wrote this wasn't a Russian. He's not an American. It's actually a Russian article, and I'm quite surprised that I got it in English, who set out and broke down what was going on in the Congo and Rwanda's role in it. And what you don't understand is that, you know, the Tutsis, there's a large contingent of Tutsis in the Congo, having gone there in the early part of the century. And, you know, they still had that, you know, they had the Rwandan genocide, and that is carrying on to this day, but in the Congo. So you've got Hutsis and Tutsis in the Congo, and they're carrying on their battle in that country. And yes, I do look askance at some of the stuff I'm hearing, and I really examine it. But because this is a Russian person who is, as you know, Russians are persona non grata at the moment, I kind of read it again.
Let me say this. Like, I agree totally with a Cody, but that go both ways. Like, the information you was reading could be also manipulated. If we not over there, we on the boots on the ground, we don't have no connections with nobody directly over there. It's hard to even say what's good and what's bad, because we still reading and we not, like, it's hard. Like, we don't know what it is, right? We know what the West and Europe are doing, especially CIA, what have you. Nothing you said, Code, is new. Everybody know about what the CIA do, and it's not just with no media, it's with companies and with everybody, and how you manipulate stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, it's still a problem that needs to be addressed and fixed. And my biggest problem with this whole discussion about African democracy and all that is the fact that if you have a European, and the Europeans come together and be organized to dominate the world, why haven't we, and I'm talking about spin out there, been on, why haven't African did that? I know Gaddafi talked about doing that. I know you're talking about doing it now, but why haven't been done? Even though they do have an African Union, and Jim, they're very critical about him, because she called him a couple of times, I think a year or two ago, about, she even wrote something about them in reference to them not standing up for certain things and calling out certain things, right? So my problem is, even with having an African Union, they're extremely weak. So how do we deal with this? Because we looking outside in, and we know throughout the years what they did with Patrice Lumumba and other African leaders and whatnot, what they did with Steve Biko and what have you. So we know they would kill us. We know they would cause division. We know they would put propaganda in the media. We know they would use companies, to go over there and disrupt, and be a part of their agenda with the capitalism and whatnot, as well as the fact that we know that they would do anything to conquer Africa. So my thing is how we deal with that, because it's still an issue. And none of the stuff we're talking about is brand new. You have people right now in Africa talking about that. I forgot this brother name in South Africa. What his name is, who be going off all the time all over social media. I forgot his name.
Julius Malema.
Yeah, he stayed going off. And then the other brother who just, I forgot, he was talking about the young brother became they did a coup and whatever. He's a young general, what have you.
Oh, Ibrahim Traore.
Yeah, he calling out.
So yes.
Talking about it, but we still haven't got to the point where we're strong enough to really resist the Western. That she talked about this brother, he fighting with France now, you know what I'm saying, for all the stuff they're doing. So it's a lot, man. None is brand new. It's just we haven't solved it.
Let me say this. Change only gonna come to Africa when we analyze the leadership. When you look at the United Nations, they have more African people of color in the United Nations than anything. And every time I look at it, I'm like, I wonder why the continent is suffering when we got all these brothers in the United Nations. Then I realized that those are the puppets. Those are the puppets. The leadership over there in Africa are the puppets. And the young people who was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, now they 20, 30, 40, 50. They are tired of suffering. So now these were the coups popping up at. They say we got to take control of the government. And the only way you take control of the government is by the military. Because without the military, the government ain't nothing. There's no one to protect them. And this one change. We have to remove the leadership. Leadership is pivotal for them to overcome the stressful situation. Just like over here, we have to change leadership. Because if they haven't prospered in all these years, they're not going to prosper under that same leadership. Just like she said, the young brother, I can't say his name, but that young brother is making moves. As he's making moves, he ousted all the people. He doing like Idi Amin. He got rid of all of them. Because if you don't control your economy, somebody else gonna profit off you. And we have to get rid of ineffective leadership. We got to get rid of the puppets. That's all it is. All for them to know what's going on in Africa, they have to put fire there.
Well, this is the thing. You just said a mouthful, and that was exactly my point. These leaders that are being elected in these so-called democratic elections, they're the ones that are being manipulated into siding with the Western world and giving them exactly what they want. For instance, the president of Congo, who was just reelected, has signed a $6.2 billion deal with China in exchange for China to come in and build up their infrastructure. China currently owns 15 of the 19 mines in the Congo. And they're now signing a $6.2 billion deal to do their infrastructure in exchange for the country's minerals. But you got $16 billion that you're going to spend on infrastructure when you have children in these mines dying and getting pennies on the dollar for a day's work. You have children mining and working in these mines to pull out this cobalt so that their families can eat. They're barely making $2 a day, and they're not even going to school. And this is the kind of situation that current president has their people in. But what he does, this is the smokescreen. That's going on, and we know it's going on. But instead, he wants to solicit the Western world and the United States to come in and help him fight against Kagame over here in Rwanda, who has nothing to do with the mining and the child labor violations that's going on in his country. So he's going to do the smokescreen thing and blame it on Rwanda for all their troubles. No, the real problem is what he's doing to those Congolese people there. and treating them like they are less than human, and having them suffer in these inhumane conditions, all for filthy lucre.
But
Let me say this though. I'm sorry, Jim, let me say this. And we have to watch what we say, right? And I'm listening to everything Cody said. You're talking about countries that's in ruin. That when you take over government, there's decisions you got to make. And sometimes decisions may require that you have to deal with certain people. Now, I don't know the situation, but that's everywhere. Like this country here is known for cheap labor, taking it wherever, you know. And if he inherited a job where he got all this mess, he got to figure it out. Now, I'm not saying his decisions that he made is right, but I feel like it's hard to critique something if you're not in that situation and you don't know what's all out there and what's in front of you. And if you don't have neighboring countries or countries in Africa trying to work with you, what have you, which a lot of them I don't think do so or don't have the resources to work together, they turn to the powers that be. And that's unfortunate. And as far as them kids, man, that cheap labor thing has been a thing that's been going on for years. And I'm not approving of that, but I just feel like I don't know. I just think it's easy for us to say that, but we're not in a position to be over economy and people and what have you. And some decisions you may make, you may make, I may make, generally rolling people may not like, but it might be in the best interest at that time. I don't really know. I'm just giving a little pushback about that.
Well, can I say that despite what you're saying, Akoti, I think I agree with Major. We don't know what decisions he has to make. My problem is that all these deals they make with Western countries, none of it benefits their population. We've now got this gentleman, I think, from some mercenary group saying it's time to recolonize Africa. What? So he's now saying it's time to recolonize Africa, not realizing that it is America and other Western powers that have destabilized Africa to a point where it can't control its resources, where it is in chaos, and where there are puppet leaders, or as I call them, misleaders.
Well, and Jimmy, you're just saying exactly what I've been saying. You just literally reiterated everything that I just said. So I think we're all in agreement that the one thing that's missing is that they're doing all what you just described in these countries, the destabilization and all of that. They're doing all of that under the guise of spreading democracy. And so therein lies the problem. So when you have countries such as Ghana or the Ivory Coast standing up and saying, we're no longer going to ship out our cocoa to be refined by the Western world. We're going to establish infrastructure and manufacturing companies here in our own country. We're going to manufacture the cocoa ourselves and sell it to the rest of the world as it should be. So you do have countries that are taking control of their resources, just the same as the lithium in Zimbabwe. They're saying, no, we're not going to send out our steel and our lithium and our iron for you to process. We're going to process it ourselves, and then you guys going to have to come and buy from us. And that in turns, number one, employs their people and also stabilizes their economy. So yes, countries in Africa are waking up to the plundering that the West has been doing in the region for years. And they're now saying, no, we're going to do it ourselves and create economic stability for our own countries. And I think that that should be recognized and applauded. And that, by the way, those countries are not really considered what we know as modern day democracies.
But the problem is, but you're still trying to put it on democracy. And my thing is, what I think you're missing the boat at is that you're saying it's democracy, right? And we saying it's not really democracy. It's the way how they form democracy. And you're coming back and saying, well, that's what I'm saying, so forth, so on. And my whole point is, I'm just saying it's the people. It's just the people that's behind. That's no more in the States. Everything can run smooth if this country don't be racist. Everything can run smooth if this country don't outsource all the manufacturing companies and what have you for on cheap labor and stuff like that because of greed. And see, people understand about capitalism, and that's where everything just breaks down. People know capitalism determines who lives, who died. You know what I'm saying? Who gonna see a meal, who don't. And when you have a government that can be paid off easily, like in the States, and this is sad, like, right, we in the Constitution, we can rise up against the corruption. We don't do that. We don't do that. You know, so it's the people. You elect somebody that's supposed to represent us in these in Congress and legislature, and what they do, they go with the 1%. They go with the money, and we notice what we do about it. We do nothing. We fight about. We dealing with racism. We fight among each other. You know, a lot of us are also falling away with a lot of the corruption and what have you. A lot of us can be bought off and whatever. So my whole point is the people. Because if you say, well, damn, we're democracy, we all can vote, and we vote you to be the president, right? You become president. And if things don't go right, was it you not knowing what you was doing? Was you corrupted by the corrupted that had money? Or did things just didn't go right because of whatever? So, I mean, it's just so many things can come from it. So I get what you're saying about the democracy part, but I'm saying let's push out democracy now. What you suggest? You suggest tribalism, right? And then we go look up tribalism and we see all issues with that and how you're able to invade that. How you gonna deal with that? So, I mean, we're dealing with countries that was colonized, and they still dealing with some neo-colonialism and what have you. And even those who are so independent and doing all right, they're still fighting with these same people that still trying to come in their backyard, steady throwing bricks and hide their hand. It's extremely hard. It's easy for us to sit down and talk about this, but I mean, like, look at Patrice Lumumba and what he did in Kenya and what have you. Look at Congo. I mean, how his focus and whatnot, right? And how he meant so well to the people, how they loved him, what have you. And look what happened. So you can have good intentions, you can have it all put together, but when you're dealing with a government that like the West, you know, you did Europe, you know, you're gonna deal with that. So it's kind of hard to be like, I don't know, attacking democracy, because what you gonna replace it with? You know, that's the whole thing. You know, so I don't know if you're gonna say communism or socialism. I don't know, because they still have to make sense, and you still have to have somebody who's gonna be running it. They're gonna be the head honcho. Then you have to have the council of body people around them and want to make sure it's fairness, I guess.
I totally agree, Major, with you about it's not having democracy. It's the form of democracy that is practiced in Africa at this moment, and what it is. And as he says, as Major says, you know, it's the people. But what the politicians do in Africa, as they do in the Caribbean, is buy the people off at election time. And I saw a video recently where a politician was going around the towns with bags of rice. And the populace are actually saying, we don't want the bags of rice. We want jobs. We want work so that we can feed our families. And this is what happens. This is the form of democracy that's practiced in Africa. And I know for a fact it's practiced in the Caribbean, where come election time, they'll be buying this for certain people and that for certain people, and then get their votes. They buy votes. That is how it operates. So that is not democracy. That is not democracy. Again, it's about integrity. If you have no integrity, you are going to sell out your country's resources to whoever, to the highest bidder. And as I said, this mercenary just said, recolonize Africa. And you know, once it's put out there, this is something they're actually thinking of.
And so therein lies the problem. You say that it's not democracy, it's something else. And that's what I am saying exactly, that they do all these things under the guise of democracy. And so when you have individuals such as the founding fathers of the United States of America write a constitution and actually say that those people who came from Africa or indigenous to the Americas were slaves, and considered chattel and less than human, they wrote that as a democratic republic, which is what we're supposed to be here. So that's why I say, if the Europeans, the Western powers, are currently in control, and they are giving the people right here in the United States two choices: you either vote Republican or you vote Democrat. Is that truly a democracy? They're telling us who to vote for, just the same as what they're doing on the African continent. They're giving they're choosing, hand picking those leaders over there, and they're rigging elections. Like there's some controversy surrounding. Go back to the Congo again. That's the most recent election. There's some controversy right now surrounding the number of votes that he really received, and also concerning how they set up roadblocks to prevent people from voting. So it's all of this is controversial, but one thing is for sure about it is that they wanted this gentleman to be reelected. So I know you guys probably heard the phrase, presidents aren't elected, they are selected. And so when you have that kind of concept going on under the guise of this is democracy, you're going to get this resistance and this pushback from those who really feel like the system that's currently in place, democracy, is not working for them. And Major, you said it, that they're not looking out. These people who are elected, the leaders who are elected under a democratic system, are not looking out for the people.
I mean, so my point is this. I agree with everything you said.
Let me say this.
What's the next thing?
If the people is not prospering under its foreign government, it's time to examine the government. It's not democracy, as Brother Malcolm said, it's hypocrisy. It's lies. They feeding them lies, and they're taking all these they are taking all the resources from Western countries, and they're helping with the division amongst the people. This ain't gonna stop until they say the way to stop the body, you gotta chop off the head, you gotta remove the government. That's the only thing I can see. We have to remove the government and replace it with some honest brothers and sisters that truly gonna look out for the interests of their people. If African is the bread basket that fed humanity, how come the people there is not eating from it? Only outsiders are eating from the basket that fed humanity. It's our turn. It's our people's turn, not just in Africa, throughout the diaspora. It's our turn.
Okay, so let's consider.
And that's what happened a few times. Y'all know that, right? When you talk about that, it happened. It's happening now too.
Let's consider Burkina Faso and the coup that just recently happened.
Mm-hmm.
That was by the military. And you know what? The people got out in the street and celebrated because they no longer wanted to be ruled by the current government, like Roland said. They much prefer to be ruled by the military, have the military in rulership power than the democratically elected presidents. And that's something that's very concerning.
That don't mean it's gonna bring them justice though or resolutions. It's just
all I'm saying is that when we're talking about the people representing the people there celebrate when coups happen and the military take over. So that
don't mean nothing.
So their protest or their celebration of throwing out a corrupt regime don't mean anything. I thought we said we were going to talk about the people. The people spoke.
I'm just saying, but that just
the people spoke, right? The people spoke when they got rid of them. I watched it, I analyzed, and I read it. It's the young people that suffer when they was children. Now they're adults, and all of them come together and say it's time to take a stance. And if the government do not have the military, what can they do? What can they do? I can't think of the president that re-elect himself and he's calling. I think y'all spoke on he calling on Western countries to come help him. Because why would you call on outsiders to come help you? Because there's something wrong you're doing.
Exactly.
But my thing is this, right? Coups happen all the time in Africa. That's nothing real. My thing is when there's coups, and what have you, is whether they can carry out the democratic or whatever is needed for the people. And that's my thing is, okay, cool, you're happy, he's gone, but who's next and what's gonna happen next?
Well, I think the gentleman Ibrahim Traore is trying to do this, and there have been several assassination attempts on him to date. Now, you recall that ECOWAS, which are the economic alliance of the West African states, were threatening to go in, which is why I think the Sahel states, I think Burkina Faso, Mali, and what's the other? And Senegal, Senegal have pulled out of ECOWAS because you have puppet leaders, especially in Nigeria, Tinubu, who there were doubts about how he was elected, threatening to go in to restore what they call democracy.
Exactly. Part.
When the people made it absolutely clear that they were fed up of what they were being given. Now, one of those countries, and I cannot remember if it was Burkina Faso, I think the president was an Arab. What was an Arab doing leading a majority black country? Amazing.
Let me say this though. I mean, Nelly Fuller said it best. He said a white man say he Arab, he's Christian, he's whatever, right? I'm just using that for example, right? Just because somebody said democracy don't mean they're coming with democracy. It's like you said in your own words, smoke screen. So I'm not saying that there's not no deception and lies. I'm just saying we shouldn't put it on democracy. We should put it on people that have been corrupting the world, that have been causing coups and what have you. Let's get down to solutions because we are at an hour now, and I think everybody giving a nice take on. I think we're saying the same thing. I think there's a slight disagreement just because of the fact that I don't want to throw democracy on the bus because I feel like it should be about the people. Unfortunately, people that say they're about democracy aren't, and you do have a lot of puppet presidents and people that's working with the West. And I don't agree. I don't agree with them reaching out to the West neither. I don't agree with that. Europe in general. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I just want to open the floor and just say that to y'all. I don't agree with it neither. I feel like it should be an in-house thing among the African states. Let's talk about some solutions, how they can address that over there.
So I think that one of the solutions would be similar to what Zimbabwe and Ghana and the Ivory Coast has begun to do: kick out the Western powers out of their country, stop giving them any kind of control over their land, their resources, and begin to invest in their people more than trying to seek help from the outside foreign countries. If the African Union can't supply you with your needs, just as the UN supplies all these other nations with their needs, then I think that you should just change how you're governing, because if obviously there's something you're doing wrong if you have to go and get outside help. So sticking in-house, shoring up your resources and developing manufacturing facilities to help support your economy so that your economy can stay stable, then that would be the first step into changing how the state of Africa is right now. That's my solution.
Well, my solution is that Africa is extremely complex, and it's complex because of its colonial history, unfortunately. But any solution has to come from within, because history has shown that externally people go in, or countries go in, to benefit themselves and not Africa. So any resolution to whatever's going on across the continent has to come from within. However, it has to come from within with leaders with integrity and leaders who are for the people. And this is currently what Africa does not have. And then you have those northern states that disrespect the Black African states. And they're all in the African Union. And this organization is doing nothing about the internal strife and the racism that is rife within Africa, the slavery that's still carrying on, the raping of resources by other African countries. So until all that is resolved and the African Union actually does what it says it's supposed to do, and that is deal with Africa properly, then Africa will still be in the chaos. But I do believe, like Major and Dakota, internally, and leaders with integrity, because that's what we don't have at present.
I think I'm in total agreement with all three of y'all. It's time for change at the head, at the top. It's time for new policies because the old policies is not working. Because the old policy is spearheaded by corrupted people, and we know who's funding them. It's like the code says, it's time to get rid of the Europeans out of Africa. All of them. Don't leave none. Get all the cancer out, because they are the ones that's causing all this confusion. And when you see a coup ain't nothing but taking a stand. It's just like revolution, the revolutionaries who was over in the United States, who was trying to bring awareness to the people. It's time to take a stance, and it's only going to happen by removing the head that the Europeans are corrupting. It's just time to change the leadership. We have to go in another direction. And these young people are fed up. And that's why you see coups popping up all over the continent.
I'm going to say this. Just like it's complex in the States, it's complex in Africa. I feel like a coup, if you're not strategic in the beginning in reference to just not overthrowing the government, but having a plan, having allies, I mean, don't be a one-trick pony. Like, you have to understand that when you're talking about a coup, you're talking about running a government, you're talking about running people. You got to have all that in place. You got to have a lot of things already set, so when you come in, you know what to do. Too many times, and I watched something personally where I got involved with a movement, right? And y'all familiar with it. I seen this person's had one idea, right? But when things got big and too big for him, he didn't know how to respond. Because you have stuff in place. You got everybody here, super paranoid. They know who to trust. And then for, the power that be came down. We can't start movements and don't have an end plan. They say when you start with your goals, when you start with your walk, you got to always have an end game. And a lot of time I think, I understand there's always going to be something new that might pop up. Or issue would have. You gotta know how to be just, you gotta know how to be flexible and adjust. But I feel like a coup, overthrowing the government, the young people getting allowed all that, don't mean nothing long-term wise if they don't see the vision. And I commend those who are standing up against the Western Europe, and I do believe that they need to get out of Africa. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they can totally cut them off, but I really feel like they need to get out of Africa. All they gotta be strategic too. Because it's easy for us to say that. We're not in a position, we're not dealing with all the chaos and whatnot, But from my observation, a lot is internally, man. Even over here, it's internally, bro. It's stuff we're not doing and stuff we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. And we're not building the allegiance, we're not building the lines, we're not building unity in the right areas and stuff. Like I was speaking about, we need investment groups. You know what I'm saying? So I went to the beauty mall today, and I went bought me some stuff from. I cut my own hair and stuff, be cutting hair, and I watched so many black people in there. I'm saying, damn, why we ain't got together and put investment group and start taking advantage? Just analyze, do some market research, and see how black people are spending so much money on hair and this, that, and other. Why we haven't thought about putting out our community to compete with the agents? And it's things like that I think about. So, for me personally, it's easy saying than doing. And when you do it, if you don't have it together, you're going to drop the ball. And it happens to a lot of us that don't have a full plan. We just go out there and say, we're going to do this. And we do it, right? But it failed because we haven't really looked at the X's and O's and look at how it was said, strength, weaknesses, as well as any enemy or what have you, somebody coming at you. So that's my take. If you're gonna make a strong stance against the West, against Europe, you're gonna make a stance against people that you know that's not working and betterment of your people and the best of your people. You take action. You just have to have it together, because in the end, a house that's on sand won't stand. You know what I'm saying? Got to be on cement. Got to be solid. Got to be like it's rock. So that's all I'm gonna say about that, y'all. So if y'all want to close out, we can close out.
Well, I just want to say in closing that military coups are seeming to be the most effective way of getting rid of rogue leaders. And the type of military coup that's going on in Burkina Faso right now, they do have a long-term plan to restore the government to the people, but not until they create some type of stability within the government, weeding out all those bad actors. So in closing, I do think that the American concept or the Western concept of democracy has placed the people on the continent at an undue, I guess you could say, a burdenous position, whereby they have to abandon the needs and the ideals of their people to kowtow and kind of ease or be like the Western powers in order to receive funding and support. And so in closing, I say, yes, I think that democracy was all wrong for Africa after pre-colonialism. And I thank y'all for tuning in. And I thank y'all for participating in this conversation.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you. Interesting conversation. And I'm going to leave it with this. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I agree totally. There's no strategy behind a lot of these coups, and this is something that is needed. They can no longer act on emotion. We have to be strategic and we have to plan. And I'm going to say I disagree. I think democracy in another form is right for Africa, but again, it is how it's how it's practiced by the leaders. And that's what I'm going to say.
I'm going to say this in closing. I still believe that it's time to remove those policies. It's time to remove those people. Just like over here, our black leaders in the Black Caucus, nothing still is not happening. It's time to move. After 50, 60, even a century, ain't nothing we haven't prospered yet. It's time to analyze the people that represent us. And those that represents the people over there, they're corrupt. Those that represent us over here, they're corrupt. Just like you were saying, only time we see the politician when it's time to vote. That's the only time. So we got to start analyzing these. And the way we overcome most of these things that the West has placed on us through communicating. We need to come, and that's like the only way we can come out of this schism is by communicating and uniting. They don't want it to be one nation over there in Africa. That's what got Gaddafi killed. That what got a lot more of the African brothers and sisters over there who was taking a stance to bring Africa, the United Nation of Africa, because they know there's too much strength in being united.
I watch. I studied Malcolm, and I watched what he was trying to do. Right, this conversation is way bigger than us people. That really was truly revolutionary. Who was really involved in the movement? I watched them discuss this like publicly. Went to Africa. Had relationships, right? We even know about what happened on Honorable Mr. Farrakhan or what have you, and how other people with verses spoke about the same thing. And I just noticed that it's just not easy. But Fidel Castro did in Cuba, and how he ran all them Western companies from over there, there's a revolutionary over there. That wasn't easy. And you had to deal with the states like for a very very long time, the propaganda and all that and what have you. And he even used the Pope, you know what I'm saying, in the sense of trying to help them keep down the conflict with the United States, what have you. But that was a real situation in history, you know, just like what happened with in Hitler and Germany, you know. There are documented revolutionary movements that have happened and what have you. And we may not agree with some of the people and things that's been recorded in history, even what happened in China when they're the communist movement and whatnot, you know. And my thing is this, right? In theory, all this sound good. Oh, the young, this, that, and other. We need to have the plan. We gotta do this, no democracy, whatever. All that sound good in theory, but in real life, you know, this is not for anybody. It's for special people that are willing to die, willing to stand up for the people and do what's right. Like as you say about it, having integrity, that's rare in a lot of us. You know. What we see in Africa is a reflection all over the world, you know, and it's just not that easy. I wish it was. I agree with everybody on the panel, but I just believe that we have to do something, and we have to do it now. I just don't know how it look, you know, other than what we're talking about, which is all true. But for me, I just feel like we had a parent race. We didn't have no other choice. Even this country, how they doing us in this country? They literally is stripping us of our rights. We're doing a live tonight, right? Police violence in America, you know, they just stripping out. I mean, just first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth, 14 amendments. Like, I mean, the Constitution, like, which we know it wasn't written for us anyway, right? And when I hear white people talking about it, because they're going to be affected by it, you know, really a lot is aimed at us. But until we stand up, whether it's in motherland, you know, islands, South America, North America, what have you, it's gonna be what it is, and the power's gonna keep ruling, and until we wake up into the Most High, whatever change that outcome. But I feel like it's gonna be on us. So for everybody YouTube viewing, I want to thank you so much. Please like and share what we're doing. Hit the notification bell. We drop content every week. We really appreciate y'all. For those on Spotify, continue to follow, continue to support. We're trying to build this platform up, and we know we new at it, but we really true at trying to get information out. And again, I want to thank y'all for being on the panel, on the podcast, whatever we want to call it. Y'all have a blessing, man. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you. Shalom. Shalom.
Life through the seasons, rain and shining. It doesn't matter, I'm still smiling. And I am sorry for the violence, but I had to break my silence. All the hate, childish. Meditate, I'm flying. I had to take my time in. Out of the trenches came this diamond. Contract expiring, but I'm still inspiring. When I pull up, it go off like sirens. When you're the captain, you gotta watch for pirates. Yeah, I'm a king, not a tyrant. Hailing from the Zanzibar Island. Yeah. Calling to higher powers. Special tablets set at all hours. Bless me with real ones, keep me from cowards. Clock piece ticking, but please keep me timeless. Exhale the toxins, breathe in the flowers. We going higher, saying goodbye. I guess it's my time. I guess